Gays under apartheid lived in constant fear of arrest.
Gays here to stay!
Same-sex love was a crime punishable by law. But with the dawn of democracy in 1994 came the promise of equality for gays and lesbians, and South Africa's constitution, regarded as one of the most progressive in the world, delivered on that promise. Section 9 of the Constitution prohibits discrimination of any kind, including sexual orientation. On paper, at least, South Africa had come a long way since apartheid discrimination.
Before 1994, of course, as Justice Cameron, who's now in the Constitutional Court, in a famous article said, gays and lesbians were basically unapprehended felons. They were people who had the sword of the criminal law hanging over their heads, especially if you're in a same-sex, male same-sex relationship, because the law said that it was a criminal offense to engage in same-sex male intimacy of any kind. So apart from the discrimination that many people experienced because of the fact that they were black or women, many people, or all gays and lesbians, also experience potentially extreme forms of discrimination and harassment.
Gays and lesbians won another victory in the fight for equality in 2005, when the Constitutional Court ruled that the country's laws needed to change to allow for gay marriage. 1 year later, the Civil Union Act was passed, giving gays the right to legally bind their relationships. But the country's progressive laws could not erase deeply held biases and hatred towards lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. In townships especially, this minority community found itself under attack. A new form of gender violence emerged, where lesbians were being raped to try and force them to change their sexual orientation. The media dubbed it corrective rape.
2012 was the biggest and the frustration year in our history. The way lesbians were killed left and right, and nobody really bothers too much, because I mean we have the National Task Team that was in 2011. But what's happening now? You hear it in that corner, You don't see the effective of it.
Funeka Soldat is a community activist and founder of Free Gender, a black lesbian organization based in Khayelitsha in Cape Town. Soldat's journey to becoming an activist followed her own horrific corrective rape. She too was targeted because she is a lesbian. As they raped her, her attackers said, "We knew we would get you one day." Soldat means soldier in Afrikaans, and certainly explains her attitude of continuing to fight against violent discrimination.
It's an opportunity that really the government or whoever in power try to say, you can say it's an African, you can say it's whatever, but you don't have to hurt people. That's a symbol. It doesn't cost a lot of things. And also people have to have a constant message, because we are sitting in a time bomb. You don't know. When you get a please call me in the evening, you don't know who's being raped, you don't know who's being killed.
South Africa has one of the world's highest rates of sexual assault, and only very few of these brutal crimes ever make the headlines. In 2008, Yudi Simelane, a lesbian, was gang raped and stabbed to death. Her naked body dumped in a stream in Kwatema Township outside Johannesburg. In 2011, Noxolo Nogwaza was raped and stabbed multiple times with glass shards. Her skull was shattered, her eyes gouged from their sockets. Why then, if South Africa has some of the world's most progressive laws protecting gays and lesbians, are they seemingly under siege?
The Constitution and the law prohibits discrimination and says we are all equal, we have an inherent dignity. But as everybody knows from, for example, racism, just because the Constitution says there shouldn't be any more racial discrimination doesn't mean that people stop being racist. And in the same way, just because the Constitution says that everybody has now a right to dignity despite their sexual orientation doesn't mean that the homophobia stops operating in society.
Activists say education is one way to change people's attitudes towards gays and lesbians. But perhaps the law could again be used to protect this community from senseless violence.
We don't have any legislation that makes it a more serious crime if you commit a hate crime, whether it's based on race or sexual orientation or whatever. But it happens. It happens in terms of race, it happens in terms of sexual orientation. And it can be dangerous to be a lesbian, for example, in South Africa, in certain situations, in certain communities.
Hate crime legislation would mean crimes against minority groups like the gay community would be viewed more seriously and punished more severely. In the meantime, Funeka and other organizations like Free Gender continue their work to change perceptions of gays and lesbians and to support those who become victims of those crimes. Michelle Craig, Cape Town.
Know more about your world. eNCA.com